How's it going, guys? So basically, I want to talk a little bit about the Russian hacker situation. And, basically, liberals whining about how Russian hackers influenced the election. Uh, First of all, I want to give a shout out to the Russian hackers and to Vladimir Putin for making this all possible. You guys are great. Second of all, I mean, it's kind of ironic to me, I guess, how all of a sudden it's the liberals who are gung ho about sovereignty and who are against these kind of leaks when they were the same ones cheering on Julian Assange and WikiLeaks when they were leaking things that looked bad for Bush and his administration, and they were the same ones cheering on Snowden when he came out and made the NSA look bad. But now that it's hurt their candidate, their prized candidate that was the anointed one since 2008, all of a sudden it's a bad thing. Even though it exposed some sort of corruption and some sort of collusion between the DNC and Hillary Clinton, the fact that the Democratic Party was sort of intentionally trying to subvert and undermine one of their own candidates, Bernie Sanders, we saw conclusive evidence of that with some of the hacks that showed that the DNC wasn't really being fair to all their candidates. And I don't know, in some way, I see that as a positive thing for American democracy that that sort of thing was exposed, that we got more information, that we now we maybe won't be quite as trusting, quite as naive, and just assuming that the DNC or any of these other organizations are actually nearly as objective or fair as we might have thought they would be. Um, and also, a lot of the Hillary Clinton leaks that just showed, you know, a little bit more of her true colors and, sort of humanized her a bit, I think. Made her look like a bit of more like a human being with ordinary flaws and like a politician with secret positions that she has behind closed doors, and then with public positions that look good for her as a politician. I think this is probably common sense that this sort of thing is how politicians work, but it is cool to see it actually confirmed, this, that, and the third. That being said, it's kind of ironic to me because it seems like the idea is third parties and people who are not, especially people from other countries, uh, we have to clamp down on them when they try to influence our election or when they hack. They also mentioned when the North Koreans launched a cyber attack against Sony in retaliation for that movie that they made about their great leader. Uh, Obama came out strong and was like, "We're not going to let you intimidate American companies and the American press, this, that, and the third." Uh, and I sort of agree with him on that, but at the same time, uh, with regard to Hillary Clinton and those hacks, it's like, is it all that different? Aside from the fact that it's another country that we're dealing with, is it all that different from NBC digging through their archives and exposing that Trump tape just in time to basically try to cover up the Hillary WikiLeaks stuff, which was coming out, and it was like everybody was anticipating she was going to get hit hard with the next leak. Everybody on the Trump side was talking about it. People were excited for it, and then boom, right in time, NBC comes out with this tape of Trump talking about grabbing women by the pussy, and everybody, nobody questioned whether or not that was appropriate for NBC to do so. Nobody on the Democrat side anyway questioned that. They were enthusiastic about it. They were like, "This it's good that this is brought into the public. Now we see a little bit of his true colors. Now the voting populace will be a little bit more informed about what kind of person they're voting for." And nobody questions the fact that it's a media organization which is supposed to be dedicated towards reporting uh, the facts and which is not supposed to necessarily try to directly influence the election one way or the other. That, like, they do get a little bit of a tarnish if they're just unabashedly towards one side more than the other. Of course, everybody has their biases and everybody makes contributions, this, that, and the third. So we all know there's bias to one extent or the other. But when you turn into a sort of propaganda ring in favor of one candidate, I think that undermines democracy every bit as much as Russian hackers coming in and exposing things about the DNC and Hillary Clinton. Um, the one difference is that NBC and the people who are in the United States, the media outlets in the United States, are presumably supposed to be dedicated towards furthering our democracy. Whereas Russian hackers, Vladimir Putin, and these other people are not even, they don't even have to hold up the veneer of pretending to care about American democracy. They have their own self interest at mind, and clearly they wanted Trump to be president. Why wouldn't they? Trump was the only candidate coming out saying he liked Russia, he liked Putin, he wanted to work with them, he wanted to form alliances with them, and he was going to, ease up on a lot of the restrictions, sanctions, this, that, and the third that the Obama administration had been imposing on them. So it's sort of straightforward. Obviously, Vladimir Putin and obviously the Russian state wanted Trump in there. Why wouldn't they? And can you really blame them for that? It doesn't mean that you look the other way and you don't have any sort of, or you try to make some repercussions for them, or you try to voice out for why you don't approve of that sort of thing, and you try to make it clear to them that we're not going to tolerate that to an unlimited degree. But at the same time, in this case, it seems like the people who should really be held accountable are the people who dropped the ball in terms of allowing for this sort of thing to happen, because you can't base the stability and the security of your democracy on the willingness of other parties around the world to cooperate with that. In other words, you can't base the security of our election on what the Russian people or the Russian hackers are or are not willing to do to try to influence it. Same with China, same with any other state. You have to assume that if they can, they will try. And you have to be on the ball to be able to stop them from doing so. And there was just clear security failures on behalf of the DNC, on behalf of the FBI. They were talking about how the FBI was aware of the fact that the DNC had been compromised as early as, I think, the summer of 2015. That's going way back. They were already aware of all of that. And they had contacted the DNC and notified them and everything. And the DNC did not take them serious. And the FBI failed to escalate it after that point. They failed to, the IT expert or whatever at the DNC was basically blowing it off. He didn't even believe he was talking to somebody from the FBI. And the FBI should have escalated it after that point, after they saw that, while they're not really taking our threats serious, they're not, they don't seem to believe us. They should have, it's a serious thing. It's the election. They should have went down there and escalated it. At the same time, the DNC should, the fact that their security expert or whoever is getting messages from the FBI and just blowing it off is a clear failure on his part and on the DNC's part. So there was failures all around. The fact that Hillary Clinton and her emails got hacked is on the one hand, it's a failure of Hillary Clinton. It's a clear result of what happens when you set up an unsecured server or whatever, when you don't have the proper security measures in place with her email server and all that. This is the whole reason why people were saying that's a big deal. Whether she did something illegal or not, she clearly dropped the ball on that. But beyond that, I have to think, how the fuck did the government let her set that up in the first place? How did they not have security teams? How do they not have cybersecurity and network security and all that makes it so it's impossible for Hillary Clinton to set up her own private email server? I mean, and keep government business side by side with her personal business. How do they not have an IT team that makes that impossible? I mean, you can't base the security of your network or the security of your systems on what the end user is willing to do. And in this case, Hillary Clinton is the end user. You don't let the end user determine the policy. And so they failed as well. I mean, it's just a failure of the United States government, and it's a failure of Hillary Clinton. It's a failure of all of them. But it seems like a little bit crying sour grapes or whatever, After the Russians succeeded in penetrating and infiltrating your network, and now you're like, boo hoo, the Russians. These we have to be stern with them, those big bad Russians. Maybe you need to be stern with your own people who dropped the ball first before you even think that you're going to be able to control what some Russian hacker thing does. That's just my opinion. But yeah, and also they're talking about what the countermeasures that we could do to sort of be stern with Russia. Obviously, we're ruling war off the table. Hopefully, we have our wits about us. But also, they're talking about sanctions. Really, sanctions? We need to be reducing the number of sanctions on Russia, not increasing the number of sanctions on Russia. And when it comes to this security shit, this should be a wake up call for the technological state of the United States government, and not for uh, the fact that other less democratic governments and agencies are highly willing to try to influence our democratic process if they have the ability to. The whole point is you need to remove the ability of them to do so. And this whole thing to me, to a certain extent, seems like the Democrats are looking for any way to cry about this election and how it wasn't fair and how they lost because this, that, and the third. They lost because everybody else's fault, not their own. Not Hillary Clinton's fault, not the party that nominated her, not the DNC and the people who dropped the ball in terms of security. It's Trump's fault, the Russians' fault, everybody else's fault. I don't buy it, and I think they need to grow up, get over it, and you know, start thinking about the next 4 years. Think about 2020. Start getting that one in order because we're I don't know. We're tired of listening to you whine. I think. I guess at least I speak for myself on that one.